They said his kindness made him weak. They laughed when he gave instead of guarded. They mocked him for caring in a world that rewards cruelty. But what they never understood was that one quiet act of kindness would one day change a life forever. The rain hadn't let up for 3 days. It drummed against the awning of the corner bodega like 1,000 impatient fingers, turning the sidewalk into a slick mirror of streetlights and passing headlights. Inside, Walter stood behind the counter in his worn, brown wool coat, sleeves pushed up to his elbows despite the chill, counting change with slow, deliberate care. At 76, his hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from years of work that never quite added up to rest. Outside, 2 teenagers huddled under a shared umbrella, laughing as they pointed toward him through the fogged glass. One mimicked his stooped posture, the other imitated the way he always said, "God bless you," after someone sneezed, even if they were halfway down the block. Their laughter was sharp, bright, careless, the kind only youth can afford. Walter didn't look up. He'd heard it before. For years, neighbors had called him that old softy, shaking their heads when he gave extra bread to the woman who couldn't pay, or let kids keep their soda tabs as store credit. His kindness wasn't performative. It was quiet, habitual, almost inconvenient. And in this neighborhood, where survival often meant hardening your edges, tenderness looked like weakness. But Walter remembered a time when kindness saved him. It was 1978. He'd just lost his job at the auto plant, his wife was sick with pneumonia, and their daughter, just 6, had started asking why there were no lights on after dinner. One evening, shivering in a threadbare jacket, he'd walked into a diner downtown, not to eat, just because it was warm. The waitress, a woman with tired eyes and silver streaks in her hair, brought him coffee without asking, then toast, then soup. When he tried to protest, she simply said, "You'll pay it forward someday. That's all I ask." He never saw her again, but he spent the next 50 years trying. Now, on this rain-slicked Thursday evening, the bell above the door chimed. A girl stepped in, maybe 10, maybe 12. She wore an oversized gray hoodie 2 sizes too big, jeans torn at the knees, her brown hair tangled like storm-tossed branches. Her shoes were soaked through. She carried no bag, no umbrella, no adult trailing behind. She didn't speak, just stood near the door, dripping onto the linoleum, eyes scanning the shelves like she was memorizing escape routes. Walter set down the register key. "Evening, sweetheart," he said softly. She flinched, but when he didn't raise his voice or shoo her out, her shoulders relaxed, just a fraction. "You hungry?" he asked. She nodded once. Without another word, Walter walked to the back cooler and pulled out a turkey sandwich wrapped in wax paper, leftover from his own lunch. He added a banana, a small carton of milk, and a chocolate chip cookie he'd baked that morning. He placed it all in a brown paper bag and handed it to her. "How much?" she whispered. "On the house," he said. "My name's Walter." She hesitated, then took the bag with both hands, like something sacred. "I'm Maya," she said. After that, she came every few days. Never at the same time, never staying long, but she always waited until the store was empty. Walter never asked where she lived or why she was alone. He just made sure there was always something warm waiting, a thermos of soup, dry socks tucked beside the register, a blanket folded neatly on a stool in the back room. Neighbors noticed. Some rolled their eyes. "Feeding strays now, Walter," Mr. Ruiz joked. Others grew suspicious. "You know how these kids are, probably stealing from you." Walter just smiled and changed the subject. But the truth was, He'd started setting aside money, what little he had, to buy her proper shoes. He'd written down the number for social services 3 times and crumpled the paper each time. Not because he didn't care, but because he was afraid. His kindness wasn't naive. It was afraid. Then came the night everything shifted. It was past midnight. Walter was locking up when he saw her sitting beneath the flickering street lamp, knees pulled to her chest, shivering violently. Rain poured off her hood like a waterfall. Without thinking, he opened the door. "Come inside, Maya, just for tonight." She looked up, eyes wide and wet, not just from rain. Something had happened, something bad. He led her to the back room, turned on the heater, draped his own coat over her shoulders. She didn't speak for nearly an hour. Then, in a voice barely there, she said, "He hit her again. My mom, she wouldn't get up." Walter sat beside her on the floor. Not too close, just close enough. "I ran," she whispered. "I didn't know where else to go." The next morning, Walter called Child Protective Services. Not anonymously. He gave his name, his address, his relationship to the girl. And when the social worker arrived, Maya held his hand until the last possible second. They took her to a temporary foster home. Walter visited every Sunday. 3 months later, the caseworker called. They needed someone willing to step in. Someone like you. Walter sat at his kitchen table a long time that night. His pension barely covered rent. His health wasn't what it used to be. But then he thought of Maya's hands, how they stopped trembling when she held a warm mug, how she'd started humming while shelving cans, how she'd asked if she could bake cookies for the next kid who needs them. He said yes. The news spread fast. Some applauded, others scoffed. Online, the comments exploded. This is why people take advantage of good souls. Real heroes don't wear capes. He's enabling dysfunction. If we had more Walters, the world wouldn't be burning. Walter never read them. He was too busy teaching Maya how to make cinnamon rolls, helping her with fractions, watching sunsets from the fire escape. Months later, Maya stood at her graduation podium. "Kindness isn't weakness," she said. "It's the bravest thing I've ever known." Walter watched from the 3rd row, tears tracing the lines on his face. Life doesn't always reward goodness with grand victories. Sometimes it rewards it with quiet moments. A shared meal, a mended sweater, a child who finally believes she deserves to be seen. They laughed at his kindness until life spoke back. And when it did, it spoke in the voice of a girl who finally came home.